Okay, so we've talked about kind of how you set up an onboarding process. And I talked about the things that you do. There's kind of 5 steps in that. The things that you do prior to an employee coming on board, the things that you do on the very first day, the things you do the first week, the things you do the first month, and the things you do the first 90 days. So now I want to shift gears a little bit, but still connected to that new employee experience and kind of give you some background and some education on the employee pool that you're choosing from. We have a very unique time in our work history. This is the first time in our work history that we actually have 5 different generations of employees in the workplace at the same time. That has never happened before in our work history. And it's important to know that because as you're choosing employees for your organization, you're going to be choosing employees from all 5 of these generations. And you want to have a little insight into what makes them tick, right? If we're talking about this employee experience and making them feel connected to your organization and a part of it, you kind of want to understand their background, their characteristics, and again, what kind of makes them go so you can design and tweak your experience. And not only that, but in your day-to-day management of them to make it more effective. So I'm going to take the time to kind of walk you through some general characteristics. I'm going to tell you what this foundation is of each generation, and then ultimately, what are some characteristics on how they like to be managed and supervised. Now, obviously, no, this does not mean every single person and every characteristic doesn't apply. But these are kind of some general characteristics that research has found apply across the board, okay? So first generation, who we call the veterans. These are individuals that were born anywhere between 1922 and 1945, our Joe Bidens of the world, okay? Now, obviously, they make up the smallest percentage of our workforce, but there are some that are still out there, okay? Now, who are they? These individuals tend to be very disciplined, okay? They're all about teamwork, and they prefer face-to-face communication, right? So when you're thinking about that new employee orientation and that onboarding process, just know that all that computer stuff is okay, but they prefer as much face-to-face communication as possible. What's some characteristics about them that'll be important that you need to know? They are all about the rules, okay? What are the rules? What am I supposed to be doing? They also love hard work, okay? They are all about working and working hard. For them, work is life. This is the generation that they grew up in, so they don't really separate the two. For a management style, okay, notice I said they're all about the rules. The most effective management style for veterans tends to be command and control. Tell me exactly what it is you want me to do, and I will go and do it. End of story, okay? So again, not getting into the right, wrong, bad, good, but just giving you some background on understanding kind of what makes them tick. So those are the veterans, okay? And you may be pulling someone from that workforce, some of our retirees that are looking to maybe come back into the workforce or things like that. Our next generation, the baby boomers, okay? The baby boomers make up the largest portion of our workforce. Well, it depends. Some studies you look at say it's the millennials. Some studies say it's the baby boomers, but they're very close. They're kind of neck and neck. Who are the baby boomers? These are individuals born between the years 1946 and 1964. They make up about 27% of our workforce. Now, what are some characteristics of the baby boomers? They came post-World War II. So generally speaking, in our country at that time, it was a very optimistic and opportunistic time, right? A lot was going on. A lot of baby boomers grew up in 2-family households, okay? So that's kind of important to understand as you deal with them. Baby boomers tend to be good with technology, not great, but they're good with it. And they also prefer face-to-face communication. Now, what's some characteristics? They tend to be workaholics, okay? Baby boomers tend to actually like meetings. Remember we talked about they like that face-to-face communication. So the whole idea of sitting in a meeting and brainstorming and working through ideas tends to be something that they prefer. A lot of baby boomers do not have work-life balance, right? For them, remember, this is a time, they were born during a time of the American dream, right? And things, you progress. So you worked hard, you earned your money, you tried to provide for you and your family. So work was the focal point, kind of similar to their parents. Remember, the veterans had that same mentality. So they kind of got that from their mom and dads about working real hard. Well, now you combine that with the financial benefits of, this prosperity that was starting to happen in America, and you see why they don't have a lot of work-life balance. Feedback. For baby boomers, feedback works best for them in the form of money and titles. How do I know I'm doing a good job? You increase my salary. You pay me more. You give me the appropriate title. I'm not saying that they don't enjoy being told they're doing a good job and that type of thing. Who doesn't? But if you want a baby boomer to know they're doing a good job and to feel good about themselves and the work that they're doing for you, typically it's about the money and the titles, okay? They have kind of a collegial communication style. So those are the baby boomers, okay? Just kind of, again, some general characteristics of who they are and what they are all about. Our next generation is Generation X, okay? Generation X, those born between 1965 and 1980. Now, Generation X tends to be the smallest portion in our workforce, okay? I myself am from Generation X, okay? We were known as the latchkey kids. Now, we were born into a society where things were starting to change rapidly. Economic recessions. We were born into a time where divorce rates were rising. We were born into a time where women were entering into colleges and these types of things. So as a result of that, okay, both parents were either working or there was a rise in single-family homes. So a lot of children growing up during this time, when they came home from school, there was nobody home. So we were responsible for letting ourselves in and kind of fending for ourselves. That's why they call us the latchkey kids, because we literally had a key around our neck to let ourselves in the door. And we knew to come in the door, pour ourselves a bowl of cereal, do our homework, watch cartoons, whatever the case may be. So this is what kind of shaped Generation X. And think about it, very different than the generation before, the baby boomers. The baby boomers, when those kids came home from school, there was typically somebody at home because it was the more traditional family. Dad was the breadwinner, mom was the homemaker. So when the child came home, mom was there. This is what they were used to. Well, with Generation X, that needle kind of moved, and both mom and dad were either working or there was only one parent in the home, so the child had to fend for themselves. So how did that impact us with respect to the workplace? Well, Generation X workers tend to be very independent, okay? We don't like a lot of rules, not that we don't follow them, but we are used to kind of doing things on our own. We do like a structured environment and some direction. Think about how we were raised, right? Our parents told us, here's what I expect you to do and have it done when I get home. That's kind of translated into how we work. We like feedback, but we want it to be quick and immediate. Tell us what we need to do. We ask a lot of questions. And typically, Generation X, our communication style is very direct, okay? We tend to be right to the point, not a lot of beating around the bush. Now, we came up in a very unique time because for Generation X, we kind of saw the birth of the technology age. So we had a foot when it wasn't the big technology age and when it was. We saw the birth of the internet. We saw the birth of the home computer. So we kind of saw it, we were like in the middle. We kind of exist in both planes. So that's Generation X. Next are millennials. And like I said before, there's some debate between the millennials and the baby boomers on who's the largest, okay? What are some characteristics of the millennials? Well, millennials, these are the children of the Gen Xers. And what's interesting is Gen Xers did a course correct when it came to millennials. So remember I told you, with Gen Xers, when we came home from school, both of the parents were out of the house, so we became the latchkey kids. Well, then when we had children, we were big on, we don't want to do our children like our parents did us. So we overcorrected for that. And as a result, what do you have? Well, millennials are very social. They're big on feedback. They like to hear about things, okay? Think about when they grew up. They grew up in a world where technology was king, okay? High-tech generation, very social, very confident. They like to think out the box. They're open to new ideas. They're very good at multitasking, okay? A lot of times, previous generations criticize them and will say, well, you're not paying me any attention. And it's not so much they're not paying attention, they're literally multitasking because this is the world that they grew up in. Yes, your millennial can be listening to you and tapping on their phone at the same time because that's normal to them, okay? They're very entrepreneurial in spirit. Dress code, what dress code? That's for Gen X and baby boomers. When millennials came around, their attitude is, why do I need a shirt and tie to go to work? You're having me do a job. I don't understand what that has to do with what I have on. Now, don't get me wrong. They have enough sense to understand if it's a business meeting or whatever, but if they're in the office all day, they don't see the logic in having to sit there in a shirt and tie, okay? Here's another thing. They're not as committed to jobs and careers. Now, a lot of people see that as a bad thing. But again, go back to what I said. We're influenced by what we saw when we were growing up. Millennials saw their parents downsized from jobs. They saw their parents get terminated from companies. So they don't have that old school sense of loyalty to a company like the baby boomers did, or even the Gen Xers. So because of that, and they saw what happened to their parents, their attitude is, let me go do this job, let me learn what I need to learn and get what I need to get and kind of keep it moving, okay? They will do what is required. They're not lazy, but it's your job to tell them what you need to do, and they will do it. They like a lot of feedback and praise, a lot, okay? So unlike Gen Xers, where we don't need you to tell us all that, unlike baby boomers, where it's like, if you want to tell me I'm doing a good job, give me more money, millennials want you to tell them. Now, why are they like that? Because we did that to them. Growing up, we constantly told them how great they were. We're the ones who told them there's no such thing as a loser. We're the ones who gave them the 7th place trophy, okay? Have you ever seen those baby on board stickers? Generation X is the one who came up with that for our millennial children, okay? So we're the ones that instilled this in them. Most millennials talk to their parents at least once a day. So they're used to a lot of feedback and praise. So again, just something to know. And then finally, Generation Z. These are the ones coming up right now, born between 1996 and 2010. They were born during the War on Terror and during the Great Recession. They are really fast learners, very social. They live through social media. Keep in mind, this is the world they were born into. Smartphones are permanently connected to them because, again, this is the world they were born into. They're very independent, okay? Very entrepreneurial. Think about it. They've seen people get rich and make a living without all this going to college and getting your education. Anything they need to learn, they can go look on YouTube and learn it. This is what they're growing up in. So what are the things you need to know? They're very cautious, but they want to succeed. Very entrepreneurial, okay? They have a network of people, and to them, that's true power. Remember when I said that new employee experience is all about connections? Generation Z, they live this. They like connecting with other people. They communicate best by smartphones, texts, and emails. I remember one time at our graduation at Harold Washington College, I ran into a couple that said they had been calling their son forever because they couldn't get into the venue. They needed him to come open the door. And I told them, I said, well, did you try texting him? And they text him and he answered instantly. That's just the generation that they're in. So again, I wanted to give you some characteristics of all of these generations. So as you're putting your new employee experience together, you at least have some characteristics that can help you design it accordingly.